comes from BC to Ontario. Like,
Yeah.
like, where is it? Like,
Yeah, you know,
looking up like where'd all the mountains. Coming down in 3, 2, and 1. First of all, thanks for doing this. And you've done this a number of times. This being getting ready for the playoffs. What do you do to get ready? Like, and at what point in your mind are you starting to think, okay, I need to get the rest of my life in order because playoff time, it's singular focus. Like, at what point of the season do you say, all right, I need to start to change what I do?
Yeah, I don't know. I think being in the league for so long and having my dad help me out and kind of experience through all this, I think early in my career, I almost took it too serious where it's like, oh yeah, playoff time, I try to change everything. And as I've gotten older, I've realized, and even I remember early in my career playing with Sakic, you know, Joe would always say, you know, people were like, oh, Sakic's such a great playoff player. And, you know, Joe would always be like, no, I just try to stay the same. You know, I think a lot of times everyone tries to do more and they actually do end up doing less. And he was just consistent, play the same way, you know, whether it's regular season, preseason, or playoff time. And so you try to have that mindset. And I think I've been lucky enough, like I said, with people I've had around me, and then my wife and kids understand that I try to just have the same schedule. Nothing changes come playoff time.
You know, it's Elliotte and I always have this conversation. What changes more in the playoffs, the officiating or the players?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think a little both. I mean, I think there's, you know, the refs you don't want to talk about the refs during the game or after the game. So I think I totally understand when the refs put the whistle away, whether it's late in the game, whether it's a close 1-1 game, or whether it's overtime. But then the players do, I think the mindset changes a little bit where it's harder to have those high-end skill goals. So there's a lot more grinding. There's a lot more physical play. And then I think as the series kind of goes on, guys are more worn down a little bit, and you have to grind, and you can't play that free-flowing hockey.
Can I pick up on that officiating comment? I'm curious too, because normally I default to whatever the players want. This is their game. What do you want officials to do in the postseason? Do you want the whistles away? Do you want a penalty in the first? Is a penalty in OT? Like, what do players want?
Yeah, I think OT. I like power plays all the time. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I also think like, in all sports, I think like when it's overtime, when it's late, when it's tied, like if it's like a questionable call, I'd rather the ref err on the side of caution, not make a penalty, you know, and just leave it at that. And guys understand. Obviously, there's always going to be complaining from the players, from the coaches, but you know that's what we do. And sometimes I feel bad for the refs because they don't see the replay. Everything has to be called in live speed, and you know, you guys know how it is. It happens so quick.
Yeah.
And then when we see the replay 5-6 times, then we could start yelling at the refs. And then I always tell the refs, I was talking to me the other day, I'm like, feel bad for you guys. You guys can't use the replay or the Jumbotron to see what you messed up on. But
it happens sometimes.
Absolutely. But it's just like, if you understand it, it's like, well, I mean, we weren't complaining when we saw it in live speed, but then when we saw the replay, like we should understand that sometimes and give the benefit of the doubt to them.
Now, are you a guy who talks to referees a lot? Do you?
No, I never do.
You never do,
Never do.
Are you a talker at all on the ice?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, sometimes like if I'm lined up with someone, I might say something quick, you know, before the game and stuff, but during the game, not really. The refs, I'm bad. I don't even know their name. Just because I don't talk to them unless I'm irate about something, then I'll give it to them, and then they'll know because I don't. Throughout my whole career, I try not to disrespect them or yell at them because I know it's a tough job. So then when I do get mad, I think they know that I have some kind of beef that I was right about.
That they say that, okay, Paul Stastny's yelling at us, so it must be something. I love that philosophy, so I have to know, what's the angriest you ever got at an official during a game? And you don't have to say
I think it was like, I think we were playing Detroit early in my career, and I was still using the wood sticks, and I never broke a wood stick. Maybe twice in my career. Faceoffs, I'd always break the one pieces. You know, the wood, you remember those things, they were thick, right? And so one time I won the draw, and then Draper slashed me and broke my stick. Chris Draper in Detroit. And that was when Detroit was a wagon. And so they got the calls, and I lost it on the ref because, I mean, I went to town on him because I've never broken a stick. Never in practice, never on a one-timer, nothing. You know what I'm saying? And I couldn't believe it. Like, that was the one time, like, slash broke my stick. I'm like, it was an obvious call, and they didn't call it. And so I gave it to him for a bit.
And did you get a reputation or anything like that after that? Like, did guys say?
No, I don't know. To me, like, I like the older refs. I just like when the refs communicate with you. So if they make a mistake, whether it's for me as a centerman, the more times I talk to them is more about the way they drop the puck, or kind of jumping too early, or your feet being in, or just different things like that. So if I'm mad about something and I know I'm right, like they'll come back and apologize. That's all I ask. And vice versa. If I mess up something and I see it, then I'll apologize to them. But when they acknowledge it, then I understand. Then I know that they're doing their job, and humans make mistakes.
Yep.
I want to ask you about faceoffs, but before I do, I want to rewind to your point about not talking much to officials, like not giving it to them. So when you do, it's more profound. Does that come from your dad? Like, what did he? Like he's like Hall of Famer, like one of the best of all time,
and statesman-like.
Yeah, he's very stoic.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
He was emotional though. Like I think he's a little more emotional. I see him, so I don't know how he was on the ice because there wasn't as much tape back then. I think so. I don't know. I think it's just, like worry about yourself kind of thing. Like the minute you start yelling at the refs, the minute you start using excuses, I think you get away from your game. So I think it's just more about focusing on yourself. And, me and him can talk about and complain about it, but after a while it's like, no one cares when you're complaining. You just got to do your job kind of thing.
Okay, let me get to faceoffs. I'm fascinated with them. And the one thing that the NHL, it seems like every year there's some type of tweak to how faceoffs are done. And where we're at now, because we used to always hear, the guys cheat with the feet, cheat with the feet, cheat with the feet. Given the way that faceoffs are done now, I'm not asking for state secrets, but is it possible to cheat still?
Well, if the refs were consistent, it'd be tough. But the problem is you have like some early in the game will be like, okay, you can't use your feet, or you'll get kicked out for using your foot, which is fine. I understand that. So if you set that precedent, then later in the game, if someone else does it, you should kick them out. But sometimes it doesn't happen like that. So to me, that's where I get frustrated. Is there a way to cheat? Yeah, they're all different. Each ref kind of looks at different things. So
do you know like how each ref does a drop?
No, but I think the more you do it throughout the game, you kind of just get it. See, that's the problem with me is like I don't look at who the linesman is. So I think there's two linesmen, right? So I think on one side of the ice, one ref drops it, and the other side, I believe, drops it. So I don't even look at that. I just kind of, worry about. I kind of look at the puck out of the corner of my eye and kind of looking at the way the other guy's set up. But it's more about, sometimes where you're on home or on the road, you have to put your stick down first.
Yep.
Some really put your stick down. A lot of times it's just kind of, you time it a little bit, right? You always get the advantage if you're kind of the offensive guy. Mm-hmm. But is there a way to cheat? I mean, there's always little ways to try to get advantage, but it's not that. It's tough.
Who's the best cheater in faceoffs in the NHL?
Cheater? Well, like what's a cheater? A guy who uses his foot? You call that a cheater or no?
Well, I guess you would be the best person to decide that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I use my foot, but then like I'll line up against Giroux and we'll be like, "Hey, are you using your foot?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "No." So we won't use our foot. If he is, like, you know what I'm saying? Like when you've gone against older guys, crafty guys, a lot of veterans that switch it up. Like it's kind of fun to like do stuff like that. Like I said, some guys, the older you are, the more games you had, the more you can get away with. And I think that's just like the elderly statesman. You see that, in all sports. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's cheating. I just think like it's kind of a respect factor.
I say it as a compliment.
I think it's good and it's a respect factor. But like I said, I don't think if one guy cheats to me, then you can cheat the same way and you're not going to get called out, right? So it's like, to me, it's if they're taking an inch, you take an inch. Nothing's going to happen. If they're aggressive, then you get aggressive and something happens and you kind of call out the ref right in front of the player, and then the player's kind of thinking about it. And that's where I tell guys, I'm like, that's where face-offs is. If you're struggling at someone or someone's using their foot and it kind of rattles you and you tell the ref, like don't say it to the ref like away from the player. Like right before the face-off, tell the ref right in front of the player, and then that player will hear it and he'll start thinking about it and won't use his foot or won't cheat. Because then he's already thinking about it and the ref's looking for it. And then if the guy does what he does, say he doesn't touch the ice with his stick, and you tell the ref like, hey, heads up, this guy, make sure he touches the ice with his stick. So then all of a sudden he's changing his mindset the way he's taking the draw. Or if he doesn't, the ref's looking for him to cheat and he'll kick him out.
Who's the toughest player to face off against?
I don't like the tough guys. I don't mind. I'm pretty good against a lot of them. I think like Hurdle's pretty good. Hurdle on his forehand side is good. Taze, me and Taze had a lot of good battles. I actually like Taze, and I think I told him like he used to be really good on his forehand side. And then when he went on his forehand, then a couple of years ago, he switched and just started going backhand only. Then he went back to his forehand side, I think, this year. And he was really good again. It's just, sometimes the good players are tougher on like their forehand sides than their backhand. And then, who's actually really good? And it almost made no sense for me, was Sid's really good.
He does that thing where the puck drops, he just slaps it.
Yeah, and I started doing it like in practice, and I'm like, I mean, you get a lot more leverage. I was like, oh, it kind of works. I actually talked to my dad like a month ago. I was like, I've kind of been doing this in practice because I'll play with steps, and he's a righty, so I don't have to take him on my right side. But it's almost more fun taking him on my forehand side now, kind of doing what Malkin and Sid do, just because you realize that, you don't need a stiff stick, but you get a lot more leverage, you get a lot more power. And I mean, if you have good hand-eye coordination, you'll win the majority of them. Not the majority, not clean, but you win them at a certain kind of percent or a certain angle, and then you kind of get it. But Sid, when he started doing that, it looked easy to defend, and then you realize his hand-eye is really good, his stick's really stiff, and he's got a lot of power behind that.
Okay, I'm going back to what you said about Giroux. Have you ever, or has anyone ever done this to you where you said to them, or they said to you using your foot, and you said no, and then you did it anyway because it was like a big face-off or something like that?
No, but I think I used to use my foot a lot early in my career, but not all the time. And then that's where my dad was always good, is like try to work on your face-off, switch it up all the time. It's not, you can't just have one move. And because the harder guys for me are the guys that switch it up all the time, where they sweep with their backhand, or they come over top of their backhand, or they sweep with their forehand, come over top of their, just different things like that. Because then once you expect something, they switch it up, and it kind of surprises you, and it gets you thinking too in the face-off
it was more like, did they lie to you, or did you ever lie to someone in a big face-off?
I think Giroux did it once. I think we talked about it, but it wasn't even a big face-off though. It was like a neutral zone or a center ice draw or something like that. But then, like you were saying, sometimes I think an interesting play or something that I think smart guys try to do is, or I tell some of these younger guys, is you might have like your go-to face-off play that you can win, but something, and you don't use it a lot. Sometimes you want to save those for big moments.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden, if you are just doing something regular all game, and then you have a big face-off in the D zone or the O zone, and you do something different, it surprises the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask, I know we're spending a lot of time on face-offs here, but I'm curious about that. The idea of get your opponent to believe one thing, and then when it's like late in the third period, offensive zone face-off, you bust something out. I'm always interested in the tactics of it. Have you ever lost face-offs on purpose?
No, the only guy I saw do that was Getzoff, and Perry did it a few times.
Yes.
And I was so pumped because I thought I won it clean, and then Perry got the puck. I was like, oh, I got the loss there. It's actually a very...
Yeah. They were the best at it.
Yes. They were really creative at it.
Yeah.
Because Perry would just jump behind the D automatically. Because as a D, covering the wall, you're kind of almost going forward looking to pick the guy. And they did it a few times, but they wouldn't do it all the time. Same thing. They would just do it a few times in the O zone, and then they would have possession. I was like, wow, that was creative.
Mm-hmm. I have to tell you, I didn't think we'd talk for 15 minutes with face-offs. I gave you credit, Marek, and you too, Paul. That was really good.
He's the guy that does it. I just ask questions.
Like if you're a big sports guy, when I think like changing your face-off like at the end of the game, it's almost like in tennis. If you ever watch tennis, and you watch like a guy like Nadal is your perfect example, like, or Djokovic will do it too. They could be in a tight game, and then against each other, there'll be a second serve, break point, they'll serve and volley, something they haven't done all match. And it's just an easy point, but you're like, wow, I can't believe they pulled that out. But you gotta be confident and like comfortable with it. And that part's hard.
That's awesome.
That's gotta come with age though, right? Like that just comes with age and experience.
Yeah.
Like we're
practice,
talking about
and then just kind of
I wanted to ask you, like you've played for a bunch of different organizations. You've been around a long time, and you've always been very insightful. And the thing I wanted to ask you, Paul, is from everything you've seen, what makes a good organization in the NHL, and what makes a bad organization in the NHL?
Yeah, I think it's like anything. I think it's culture, but I think everything probably starts from the top down. Whether it's business, whether it's organizations, and whether that's ownership, management, coaches, and trickles down. And I think the top ones they do a good job of compartmentalizing what they're good at, and then they don't try to micromanage. You know what I'm saying? Then they let the coaches do their jobs. The coaches trust their assistants to do their jobs. Their assistants trust the video coach works with the players, and everyone kind of knows their role. I think that's a big one too. Everyone knows their role, and everyone feels involved in the organization. So when things are going good, everyone feels good when things are going bad. Everyone feels like they want to pick up the slack together.
And is there one team or group or person who led like that? Like when you think about where it really worked really well and why?
Yeah, but that's sometimes it's stuff you don't see. It's behind the scenes stuff that you don't see, And so as you get later, or whether it's like talking to coaches later in my career, when I see them in the summertime, I'll hear more stuff, the business side of the game or behind the scenes part of the game. And you realize, like, I think as a player, you realize, the coaches are probably hearing it from the management, and sometimes the management are hearing from the ownership. And I think you don't realize stuff like that when you're younger. You just think that, everyone's kind of working for you. But you realize it's, everyone's in it for the long haul, and everyone wants to win, and everyone feels the pressure, and, everyone's livelihoods are at stake in a different sense. Mm-hmm. And I don't it's hard to be specific. Like I said, if you're running an organization in the NHL, you're doing something right, right? Sometimes you might be missing a piece here or there, and it's easier said than done to find that missing piece. And it's just, sometimes you get lucky with it, and sometimes it just takes patience, and you have to kind of let people grow into it.
Mm-hmm. What does Carolina do well? What's attractive about the Hurricanes?
Everything's very tight knit. I think it starts like the culture. I think Rod did a good job, and for how intense he is with hockey, with wanting to win, he's also a big family guy. And I think him having an older son who just won a national championship, and him having a younger son, I think puts a different perspective on that. And he does a good job of relating to kind of being in the moment, enjoying the moment, but also like when you have family here, when you have friends here, like these are the memories that will last a lifetime, instead of, just so like focused on winning a game or two. Sometimes there's a bigger picture. And I think as I've gotten older, Paul Maurice was like that. As I've gotten older, and I have kids, and, I have my dad to talk to as a soundboard, like, it's just a different perspective, and I think he does a good job with it. And sometimes when you're younger, you don't realize that, and as you get older, you're like, oh, I'm glad I had that, and I'm glad I had someone kind of like feed that into my ear and realize how important it is. It's just not the game of hockey. It's kind of everyone that's involved in the game of hockey, and whether it's the training staff, whether it's the people working at the rink, everyone's in it together, and we should treat everyone the same and treat everyone as one big family.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it was incredible to watch, Brind'Amour Moore the last night, like just getting a chance to go see his son. I heard a lot of you guys were watching on your phones and things like that. I mean, I wanted to ask you about is there going to be a third generation of Stastnys in the NHL someday?
I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just want my kids to have fun whatever they're doing. But
good.
I mean, you guys have kids. You know how it is. It's just like they gravitate towards you love. Mm-hmm. And, my son kind of just like doing whatever. And now he's gotten a little older. He's hanging out with Pacioretty's kids. And now it's just hockey all the time. And if he wants to have fun with it and learn and keep getting better, I'll push him that way. Mm-hmm. But I won't force anything upon him. And I think that's what my dad did with us. I think, he wants... First of all, it's so hard to make it in professional sports, in any sport. So I don't think you should ever have the mindset of, I want my kid to be a professional athlete just because it's so tough. I think, if anything, I want him to be involved in youth sports, to get used to playing with a team. You learn a lot of stuff just from youth sports or team sports. And then, whether he's got me, whether my son's got me, or my brother or my dad, there's a lot of people that can help him out if you want to, play the game of hockey. But at the same time, it's... you don't want to force anything upon them, and that's the way I had it growing up, and that's the way I want to be with my kids.
Great stuff.
What type of hockey dad do you think you'll be?
I'll be like my dad, I remember my dad would always sit in the corners by himself, and I never understood it. Now I understand why, because no one would bug him, and he just watched the game. I think when he was there, he just wanted to watch me play and watch the game. I think if he sits with all the other parents, they're always asking him questions, whether it's youth hockey or junior hockey or college. They're always asking him questions. And, he doesn't mind it, but I think when the game is happening, he just wants to watch, me play and watch our team play. And so even when it's NHL games, when we're in St. Louis, rarely he comes to the games. I think he'd rather watch at home, which I understand, because then he can watch everything. When he goes to the games, he'll bring someone. There's always someone kind of trying to ask him questions. Mm-hmm. And I think people realize now that when the game goes on, he gets zoned in. It's like, don't talk to him. When it's intermission, you can ask him whatever you want. But he was also good at, like I said, I have, my dad's my mentor, the guy I respect the most. as I've gotten older, now I've gotten even closer with him. It's a cool dynamic. But he was never, he was very rational. He was very like stoic about things, where if something, needed to be said, he'd almost wait a couple hours and then say it. He was never emotional about things. And I think he was good about that with me, my brother, and my sisters, whether it was things we did away from sports or with things we did with sports, just because he didn't want to get caught in the emotion and overreact.
I always loved watching your dad play. I was born in 1970, so I remember him coming to the NHL. And, when you talk like that, the one thing I really remember, and I happened to be there when he talked about it, was at the Olympics in 2002 when they had that qualification and the players couldn't go join their countries, right?
Yeah, because they were still playing.
Yeah, because they were still playing. You couldn't go until the main round. And, Slovakia, he sat on the bench and then he played. And I just remember how mad he was after, like just saying, like, you don't understand how important this is for us and how we need this. I just remember saying, like, I just admired the way he handled it. Like, you never heard him get too mad, but I knew in that moment that it was important to him because he was mad about that. It was something I remember, like, if you're ever going to try to be something, you have to carry yourself like that.
Yeah.
I always liked that about him.
Well, like I said, I think for him too, it's just, he's proud of like where he's from, and especially once, Slovakia became its own independent country, so for him, it's always been, obviously God, family, friends, and then, his country where he's from. I think he's very proud of that. And, every country has ups and downs where they were, but I think he always has an idea of how to represent it the right way and how to represent, whether it's, the country you represent or it's representing the last name on your back. There's always something to it, and there's always a reputation to uphold. And I think for him, those, he always has very high standards.
He was in an era, because I'm the same vintage as Elliotte, and I remember, the first time, I think you and I have talked about this, the first time I ever heard about your dad was before the 1976 Canada Cup, and my dad sat me down and talked about Stastny and Zorilla and all these players we're going to see playing for Czechoslovakia. And that was still the time when there was like a mystique about players from over there, and we never got to see them here. And players like Nedemansky trickled in, and et cetera, Richard Farda all the way, and a lot of Swedes came over. But that was so much of a different time. Like, how much has your dad told you about the mid '70s? And, the 76 tournament and coming to North America, where there was he existed in sort of legendary status even before he got to the NHL.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if I told you, like, a lot of the stories I hear aren't, because I've never thought about asking him that, but I've heard a lot of different stories, whether it's, like the '80 Olympics or the Canada Cup or different Olympics. But so sometimes I'm like, I don't even know if he's talking about the late '70s or early '80s or, late '90s, all the, the eras or the years kind of jump around. But I think when we have, like, for example, like my family's at my in-laws, this weekend for Easter, they're all there. And I guarantee there's someone asking my dad a question about something about 1976. And then that's where, like, me and my brother would be like kind of listening and kind of learn something new about it. Because he's very quiet about it. He's very humble. If you know him really, like, we can jab at him, but like, I think he's humble, keeps himself very quiet, doesn't really let out a lot unless he trusts you a lot. But a lot of times it's at parties where we have family, friends, especially my buddies' dads would ask questions like this. Sure. And then for me, as I got older, I got to appreciate it, and I would kind of listen and be like, oh, wow, I never knew that. And then maybe I'd piggyback on that question down the road and learn more about it.
Is there a story about your dad or your uncles that you liked the most or interested you the most?
No, I always laugh at, like, because they have a record, right, from my dad and Anton for most points on the road. Remember, they had like 8 points in Washington or something. And I was like, every time it pops up, like, it pops up on Twitter. My sister will, like, send a group chat. It's like, oh, anniversary of, like, most points on the road. He's like, yeah, but then we had 4 points the next night and 3 points, like something like that. It's like, we played back-to-back games. I'm like, geez, he still remembers all this. It's kind of like me. It's like, you remember all these, you played so many games, it happened so long ago, and he still remembers, like, where they were. Like, somehow he's like, I think we're coming off a back-to-back or playing a back-to-back, and then we still accumulated a few more points. Did they talk about that? Like, no, Dad, they just talk about one game. Enjoy it. I
wanted to ask you about Winnipeg. You were traded there, and you went back there. And, I remember your press conference at the end of last year. And, I just wanted, like, I always love the honesty. Like we want people in hockey to speak from the heart, and then you can't criticize people if they speak the truth. I was wondering, did you get any pushback after everything you said at the end of last year?
We got to be held accountable, whether it's player on player, and we got to have more respect for each other. And when you don't have that, when you don't care about the teammate next to you potentially, and you just care about what you're doing or certain individual things, that kind of starts bleeding the game.
No, I mean, maybe on Twitter or stuff, but I'm not on Twitter. So, no, I think more people are like, I'm happy you said it, because I think, like you said, like sometimes people are thinking it. Sometimes I think it was just frustrating because I think we knew we had so much potential and it was just, we just couldn't get there. And then, obviously we had coaching change, and then I think you were still dealing with COVID a little bit, so that was frustrating. Then you'd have canceled games, and it was a long winter that year too. It was like the most snow they had, so there's a lot of factors that played into it. And I think, sometimes younger guys, you can't say stuff like that, and sometimes whether you say it, sometimes you're just honest. You got to be honest. And like I said, I've always had a good relationship with the media guys and media relations, just because I've been treated with respect. I'll treat them with respect, and it just is what it is. I didn't think I said anything crazy, but like I said, because you're in a hockey market and you're in Canada, maybe got blown out of proportion a little bit. But no, there's no pushback at all. And like I said, if there's anything I ever said in public, I'd always say it to the players first or to the management. There was never, I'm going to say something in public, but I won't say it to the players. It was stuff that we've talked about, or I talked about with Chevy and just ending your meetings. And, like that's what I like about there. At the end of the year, Chevy's honest with everyone. He's like, hey, just here's my thoughts, here's your thoughts. What can we do to be better? What can change? What should we change? What do you think here? What do you think there? And he asks everyone like that, and I like the honesty that they have there.
This has been great. Thanks so much. Best of luck in the playoffs. Thanks for always making time for us.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
One thing we didn't ask is there any chance you're going to play again next year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that
1 year at a time,
I just wanted to make sure you hadn't made a decision or anything.